students, thus requiring more consistent purchasing of these items. So as we factor in our cost of food, as opposed to our previous year's costs, those are what gets factored in here. I still do not have a percentage increase on just the food.
And to be clear, free and reduced continue to be free and reduced.
Correct. Absolutely. Free and reduced continues to operate. Thank you for that question. Operate. If you qualify for free meals, you will still not pay any increase. If you are reduced, again, those amounts that are charged are based on a federal guideline. It has nothing really to do with the price increase. It's what the federal guidelines are and how much they reimburse. And so that is predetermined outside of our district. Federal set up guidelines as to income guidelines, and only a select number of people have that information, so I can't say what it is or what it will be. But it is figured, and you see that information probably around July, and then we'll have that to provide for applications.
You know all that.
I think you have a second.
Do you have a second? Did I have a second? And all those in favor? 6. And we move slowly.
I'm trying to. I'm having to do it off my phone right now because Facebook updated and we don't have the right version of Chrome. We missed the very beginning, but it's hard to hear.
Toby, can you hear? Toby, we can't hear you. Something's wrong with our sound.
I'm trying to. I'm having to do it off my phone right now.
No, before I did. Last time I did, but not tonight. But not tonight. Does he have earphones in? Tell him, can he unplug from his earphones? Yeah. And you're on my computer. You're on. You're on my computer. Sheila, can you say something?
I can hear you, that's great.
Fred, can you say something? Can you say something, Fred?
Control V is your microphone mute shortcut for the record.
It won't let me unmute you, Fred.
Yeah.
I turned my whole thing off. I just logged out.
I think it's good.
Okay, I think we're good now. Hope so.
Okay.
Unmute the mic.
Toby, are you there? Toby, can you
Yes,
hear us?
he's there. Can you hear us, Toby? There you go. You have to unmute that computer.
Okay, now it's good.
There you go. Now I got it.
Toby,
I
can you
think
hear
we got
us?
it.
Yes.
Okay, how do you vote on the consent agenda?
We're on the adopted agenda, I think.
Yeah.
We're adopting the
Adopted
agenda,
Okay.
Jennifer and Melissa. I don't think we had a vote on that.
Okay, how do you vote on the agenda?
I love it. I'm all in.
Okay. All right. And any public comment?
I should have taken that off the agenda.
Oh.
I do want to say though, for the public, that as long as we can follow the governor's guidelines, June board meeting, we would be able to have up to 30 people in the boardroom. We think we can seat them 6 feet apart. So we will still be limited, but more open than we currently are.
Okay. All
We're
right,
talking about phase 2 restriction.
Yes.
Thank you.
the next item is the consent.
I move to approve consent agenda items A through J.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
7. Old business, update to the continuous learning plan and COVID-19.
We have several things for the board this evening regarding this, and I'm going to start with Brian Becker, who is the AD at Newton High School. He's been working with the coaches. I did put a draft in the board agenda this evening about what he and the coaches have come up with. And so, Brian, if you would like to speak to how we might be opening up summer athletics.
All right, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, well, if you've had a chance to look at the document that Dr. Ham shared with you, we've spent some time over the last week kind of brainstorming what a summer weights and conditioning and activities program might look like given the current circumstances. And today I met with the athletic directors and principals in the ABCTL, which is the league that we belong to kind of gain some feedback from what the other schools our size in our area and our league are also doing. And we've kind of done a little bit of brainstorming, just not being able to have a consistent league policy just because of the range of sizes and locations of schools. But to make sure that we're always closely on the same page. And so this document that we put together reflects the thought processes that our coaches and I have had, as well as, kind of gleaning some things from the other schools that we are closely related to. So our plan is based on kind of 3 different pieces. One is the governor's orders and her phasing plan that she has put forth. Also looked at CDC guidelines, and we also looked at the CASHA recommendations for what their summer activities programs should look like. So the essential piece of this is that nothing can take place prior to June 1st. And that it would only take place if we are in phase 3 of the governor's plan, where we have bigger group numbers that can be together, but we're still going to try to keep smaller numbers just for the safety of our students. The document that we put together is kind of what our hope and plan would be. It kind of starts with our general sanitation guidelines. We would make sure that we have doors propped open, that our staff and students do enter and exit through the same locations each day. It also includes some type of screening. We discussed the possibility of getting thermometers and doing screening that way. We may not need that, but we at least felt like we needed to just check with our kids, make sure that they are not feeling any kind of illness effects before they come into the weight room or into the conditioning programs that we're doing. And also maybe to check just to make sure students haven't traveled to a highly infected area that would put them more at risk of an infection as well. So that's a part of it. We're gonna have plenty of hand sanitizer available at all of our stations. in the weight room, in the gyms, as we get to those points where students will be required to sanitize both before and after they do any activities in those spaces. And then we will also have the necessary supplies to clean and sanitize the equipment, the weight benches, the bars, the weights that students would touch after each session. And then with our maintenance and custodial staff, a more deep cleaning with the sanitizing machines that they have at the end of each day, so that it has that period overnight to fully take effect with that sanitizing. We're also going to try to limit the access into our building. So students coming to the high school would only come into the weight room, Willis gym area. We wouldn't have them going into the other parts of the building. If there was any activities that they might be doing in Ravenscroft gym, we would have them come in from one of the exterior entrances directly into the gym, so that we're not walking through the school building itself. We're also going to have our students bring their own water bottles and make sure that they are clearly labeled, and we'll have signs and obviously plenty of instructions to not share those water bottles with each other. And also keeping in mind, just, if they have towels or anything like that, that those items should not be shared. We're also, to kind of be very precautious, we're going to make sure that we have assigned groups, that those groups stay consistent and stay within the guidelines of the number of people that we could have in those groups. And we will keep all of that information on file, just in the case that we did have a student get sick with COVID-19, or we had an outbreak, that we would have the documentation and be able to do the contact tracing that would need to take place. And as always is with our summer activities, as much as I know our coaches would love to absolutely have them there, attendance will still be voluntary, as it always is. So the kind of phases of that program are based more on the CASHA phasing in of summer activities, and the CASHA outline, or kind of their week 1 outline, is that kids may have no more than 3 hours of practice or conditioning time per day. I don't know that any of our kids would ever get to that amount, but the first week they can't go and spend time as a basketball team doing a bunch of basketball drills, or football doing football drills. They can do some basic sport-related items as part of the conditioning, but week 1 and week 2 are really about conditioning and weights, and kind of getting students reacclimated to that activity since they've been off for so long. We're going to limit our groups to 30 students per group that would be in one area at a time. So like, for example, one of our sessions in the morning is usually more of our football group, and we would break those into 2, potentially 3 groups that would hopefully have no more than 30. They won't have more than 30, but they probably won't even get to that number. Some of those kids will be outside in their group. One group might be in the weight room, and another group might be doing a different type of conditioning activity at a different location outside or in Willis Gym. And we'll make sure that those kids are not basically cross-contacting each other and transition from place to place. And our adult staff are going to stay, who's in the weight room will stay in the weight room, those outside will stay outside with those kids. Our hope is that by June 15th, we'll be back to somewhat normal, and our kids can have a little more flexibility to kind of return to a normal schedule. But this is going to be very fluid. We know that we may have to make adjustments along the way, and we know that the reality is we may just have to adjust depending on what the governor's plans are as they move forward, and what KDHE and the Harvey County Health Department also advise us to do. I have been in contact with Lynette Reddington at the Harvey County Health Department, and she has kind of gone through this plan with me and is okay with it. So we've talked about these precautions that we need to take as we move forward, if we are able to get to a point where we're able to do these things. So
Anybody have any questions? Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome.
Anything else on that one?
In addition to that, we have a report on the surveys that were given to parents, students, and oops, I have to do this. Parents, students, and staff members. This has been shared with, I'm sorry, I keep punching the wrong button. Or to talk and do something at the same time. This information has been shared with the Professional Learning Council that has been working, as well as with all of the schools for their individual school. And the district mentor, team teachers, and those that are on, those admins that are a part of that group. However, all administrators have received this information for their school. And so Sheila, I'm on the first page of this if you want to speak to it. So I am now on the one that says numbers of students participating. And if you just tell me when to click, I'll click.
Sounds great. Can everybody hear me okay?
If you speak up, we can hear you.
Okay. So as Deb was sharing, this is what we saw at the mid-quarter. And just reporting out how many responded by student or by building for the number of students. So overall, not a bad number of students responding. So taking all of that into context as we were reflecting and thinking about what we were doing with the continuous learning plan, knowing that this would only represent a little less than a third of our total student population. So on slide 3, the things we were asking them was how we were feeling. You can see the information there. I might add that if it were Cooper and kindergarten, first, second grade students, those may have been answered or more than likely answered by their parent or guardian, not the student themselves. And those that said they were feeling lonely definitely have support available through our social workers, counselors, anyone on that district mental health team that might be working through some referral processes. So hopefully we were capturing some of those students that were responding and feeling alone. Onward then, again, thinking about midway through the quarter, so latter part of April, and the percentage of how they felt school was going for that week. Slide 5, definitely a theme, not only just in the survey, but then also what teachers were reporting out when we meet weekly. Certainly excited to be able to see their classmates in those live sessions. Being able to get the support that they needed, even to some saying, I'm happy to be back at school, even though it's more in this online delivery model. And then of course, appreciating being able to talk to their teachers, whether it was a live session or via email or even a phone call. Slide 6. We have used this information ever since the mid-quarter in thinking about how can teachers and administrators and support staff adjust their help to the students. And one of the ones was definitely thinking about that daily routine. How do they get that to work, knowing that at school that's been more defined for them. So if they're not a part of the school day for that 6 to 7 hours a day, how do they organize the rest of that? I know the schools that we're doing, Santa Fe and Chisholm in particular, doing one-on-one mentoring sessions, we're definitely able to address that a little bit more. I think the second comment then was adjusting with all the emails that would be coming in, especially if they were in those grades 5 through 12, and they had more than one teacher. We were hearing something from on a regular basis. And then the lack of motivation, I think, just with all the things that are going on and knowing that they have to have some of those skills to be able to want to start doing their work on their own if they couldn't get their day set up the way they should. Slide 7 then, we wanted to know how much time they were spending on their schoolwork, and as Brian was saying, that maximum for the high school or grades 7 through 12 would be no more than 3 hours. And so as we've been hearing that feedback, we've been reaching out with individual teachers and working with them. And then also thinking about, okay, if this student has an honors class and some of their electives, then how do we coordinate for that student so that we're not pushing out more than what they need to be. I do recall hearing, I think, pretty consistently that math has been a more difficult content to do online, and how to work through some of that. And I know we've got some teachers that are doing an amazing small group or one-on-one support there, but even hearing that from some of the parents as well in comparison to some of the other subject areas. Slide 8, one is also just seeing what kind of support students have from an adult during the day. Deb, any questions or comments so far before I go on to the next one?
Not so far.
Then the next section is breaking it down for families. Really nice high number there, and showing that again by building. I believe that as we have been meeting as that PLC DMT admin team, and then also with our district grade level content area facilitators, we were definitely at an advantage to be the one-to-one. And then a very high number of families having that internet access, a few that still did not, but much larger percentage than that did not have that access, as well as some of those answers there correlating with what the students were sharing as far as homework that they were able to complete. On slide 11, giving us some feedback then from the families as to what support is available there during the school day. I know when we were reading some of the comments, some of the families were talking about how if they were still at work, if they were one of those that were in an essential job, that the evening became still very busy if they weren't able to support their child until that time frame once they had gotten home. So then shifting to slide 12, I know that one of the things we wanted to make sure they were feeling supported with was the technology use, and then also trying to get the majority of that schoolwork done during those school hours as opposed to in the evenings. Teachers have been great in emailing back and forth to both the student and the families, and that was something we also noted in this survey, depending upon the age, and really it didn't matter whether it was even the middle school or high school. We wanted to be involved in what the assignments were and what to support their child. This slide here, we've definitely spent more time in thinking about how are we supporting. Many of them not necessarily needing anything more, but definitely wanting to be aware of those that are saying they need mental health services. Childcare is a small percentage, but it's still 54 families that responded that, and then transportation. And I know that we've had our ICS team that's been working on the latchkey and trying to get all of that organized and set up as well too. Ready for the next section, Ed?
Any questions on the family section? Yep.
And then the last section here is then broken ready to fill out the end of quarter surveys. I did send out senior last week, and then we'll send out these same groups to the rest of our other students and our families and staff again to get very similar feedback, just maybe adjust the questions just a little bit. So this slide is showing by building for our staff and those that have responded. Asking the staff about the amount of tasks even for them and their perspective as to too much. Slide 17, I know that we were getting feedback much like we would think about the students as something that was manageable for them as to the amount of homework they could be doing. Staff were saying that in some instances there were too many meetings being scheduled, and so trying to balance that with the support they needed to give to students, and so being aware of that, giving that feedback to whether they were meeting with building administrators or their peers, other supports across the district to try to make sure that we had enough time for teachers to be able to reach out to students and families. This slide here is definitely one that I look forward to seeing what feedback we get at the end of the year, and then also thinking about the 2020-2021 school year. That top one of creating a meaningful learning experience. Definitely want to be mindful of that, and then also balancing that with the staff and their own social emotional needs. I think I've said it in the past, but I have seen staff members trying to work through, maybe it's a collaboration time or a meeting, and they have their own children that they're tending to during that time. So they've definitely got a lot on their plate as well, besides just their own families and working with their own children. Asking our staff then how confident they are in this delivery model. I think, again, this one speaks very highly to our supports that we have had with our technology integration, and specifically Megan Nagel, and she was able to reach out to have anywhere from 1 to 3 staff members at every building that were that go to, giving them a lot of that support definitely early on in this quarter, and then continuing to do that each week. And yet I know that we have recognized the concerns for special education services and how do we continue to provide that, and parents wanting to receive that support. So definitely something that we've continued to recognize and work through. This question was asking about from building administration and district administration. So giving the different percentages there. Certainly favorable and frequent communication and helping with making sure everyone was on the same page. And then the last part of it of just as with any survey, using that for reflect planning. There's definitely a tone of putting the students first. Have heard multiple comments as teachers and staff and administration have reached out, and other support groups, whether it was through social media or their own Zoom or Google Meeting, then definitely feeling very fortunate and supported here in 373 in comparison to what we might be hearing from colleagues. So it's definitely encouraging. Any questions on any of that?
I just have a question. Sheila, how are the social workers and counselors involved in this process?
Yeah, so our PLC DMT admin team, we've got, including one of our social workers there that's on the district mental health team, so we check in with that social worker every week. And then we have them again the following day on Wednesday with our district grade level content area facility. Frequently sending communication as I receive information just from a system perspective. And I know that Reagan continues to give her supports with that district mental health team. And if Brian is still on the call, he can look back at my screen. No, Brian's not there anymore. But Blake might be.
He's
But
there.
there you are, Brian. Okay. And that I know that administration have also been working with social workers and counselors when there's been specific needs for students that have come up as well.
And has there been an increased need during this time of students needing?
I don't,
Can you repeat that for me?
she wants to know if there's been an increased need reported from our social workers and counselors. I don't know that I would say from what I've heard that there's an increased need. There is a need always in our schools. And what our teachers have been doing and our administrators are tracking students to make sure that they're making contact with students, that teachers are making contact with students. And so if they're not hearing from those students or their families, then the social worker reaches out. Or if a child shares a concern during a session, a teaching session, much like they would in a school setting, inside the school, if the child shares a concern, then the social worker is contacted and reaches out to that family or takes the appropriate steps if it would be.
Yeah, and I guess the
Child
question
care.
was that have we seen an increase since this COVID-19 continuous learning process?
What I would not link the two things together. What I would say is that DCF has reported to us that there is an increase in the number of calls that they are receiving. And Sheila, did you have anything else on that that you might know that I'm not aware of?
No, again, I think that from my point, looking at the system view and just making sure the communication is there, but in regards to each individual building, that would be something that I'd have to inquire more with the building administrator to see if there's been an actual increase or not. I think it is mirroring the supports we've already been putting in place and how we work through the referral process.
And again, Sheila mentioned, but it is something for the board to be thinking about. There are no foreshores moving forward as to how this virus will act in our state or in our nation. And other countries that have loosened up restrictions prior to the United States are beginning to see increases in cases. So I know our teachers are concerned, our administrators are concerned about what is next year going to look like. And so one of the things that has been beneficial, I guess, about this process has been that we now have done it one time. And we have some ideas about what works, what doesn't work. We also know that we will have a need to increase in some way access for some students. And it's as Sheila mentioned, it's a relatively small number of students, but still it's a number of students that don't have access or don't have easy access right now. So how can we help them and how can we help those families moving forward if that's a need? So just something else, I guess, to be thinking about as we go into the summer months. In addition, I noticed in the paper that the county had included the amount of money that they had expended thus far. Now, they have done some things in order to prepare for their office reopenings that we have not done in our schools. So, for example, we have not put up plexiglass in front of any of our desks in any school. Those might be things that might need to be considered moving forward. You might have seen in the paper that the county now has a plastic barrier between the public and the people in the tax office, for example. So we haven't done any of those things, so our expenses are really more related to providing food for our students that are above the normal costs, and our maintenance around cleaning and disinfecting that we have been doing, some very minor technology expenses, and then some printing expenses for printing packets and things that, again, were associated directly with this, even though some schools would have done some printing anyway. So the total cost on that is $61,397.61. And I had included that in information to the board previously as we had discussed it in our operations briefings, but it wasn't included in the public information, so I did go ahead and include that this evening. In addition, the district will receive, as part of the CARES Act, $453,653 for expenses to address COVID-19 expenditures, and that will include expenditures through September of 2021, and likely will include how will we address the fact that we have a number, like all of our students, who missed 8 weeks of school, and there will be a significant, we are projecting anyway, a significant summer slide that we will see in the fall. And so how will we help those students and get them caught up to where they need to be? So there will be a lot of decisions moving forward about what that looks like. There's been a lot of ideas tossed on, just kind of tossed out by teachers and administrators and other superintendents from other districts. And so as the summer months proceed and we get back into school in August and in our benchmark testing, then there will be a better idea of what's the gap and how much do we have to do to fill that. So there will be, again, those dollars provided to do that. Some publications have included the total amount, so I'm going to make sure it was separated out for you and for the public. That $24,000 additional dollars are allocated to St. Mary's for the same purpose. So as a member of our Title I services, that's the way the dollars are allocated, and so they will also have dollars to spend towards that. We will continue with our operational meetings and incident command through the end of the school year, which for us will be May 18th officially. And then we will cease that and go back to normal operations as it relates to just how we normally make decisions. And we will stop having the twice weekly meetings. We will continue to maintain the close to the public generally for district office in our other support buildings through May, and then open on June 1st, operating as normal. There will be signs posted requesting that the public entering our buildings wear masks, but it will be a request, not a requirement. And again, some of that, of course, is subject to us moving through on the governor's spaces. Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is the approval of the insurance proposal.
Back in, gosh, time runs together now, late February, early March, I think we made known that we were being dropped from our current insurance carrier, Wright Insurance, who decided to pull out of Texas, Oklahoma, Florida, Kansas altogether, so they weren't just picking on us, citing great hail risk and great tornadic risk in our areas. So with that, we worked with our broker, Conrady Insurance, and I have Daryl and Chris Conrady here to help speak to the benefits of the proposal that we're bringing forward. This is a self-funded, or not self-funded, an insurance pool with school districts throughout the state. It's the Kansas Educational Risk Management Insurance Pool, or KERMIT for short, if you will. They have been operating now for 3 or 4 years, I think, on their own, but they've recently obtained approval from KSB and have their stamp of approval and backing on it. So with that, we're excited with the savings that they have brought forth to us in the insurance proposal. And just due to the nature of our insurance renews June 1, we need an approval tonight, but I'm going to let Daryl kind of speak to some of the benefits that we will receive from making this switch to the KSB risk management pool. Daryl, can you hear me?
Yes, Matt. Hopefully I'm coming through. Okay.
You are.
Yep.
Okay. KSB, for a number of ways to be insured, and they looked at this pool that was already in place in Kansas, and the KSB voted unanimously to embrace this program, and the name is actually going to be changed to KSB Risk Management Fund. And I know that you have a spreadsheet in front of you that has kind of the side-by-side coverages and premiums. And as Matt has already indicated, there's a very nice savings for the school district this year. But in addition to that, just about every line of coverage, we have an enhanced level of protection. And the limits, the two areas that you actually are going to get to decide on is your property coverage and the statement of values that lists all the buildings and the contents that we have across the district. And then your fleet schedule, the vehicle you have. Those are rated individually, but the rest of the program, the coverages are all pretty well baked in, and just to every coverage level, there's either a higher limit or a better deductible for the school district. You might ask why the pricing is better. Historically, insurance companies price insurance by every building, every vehicle, just every component, where the pool is pricing on the layers of coverage that they are securing in each area of coverage. And it just turned out to be a much more favorable rating process for 373. As Matt mentioned, there are a number of schools in the program, some larger districts across the state. Currently, they have about 30 districts, but I can tell you there are 80 districts in wait to receive this KSB discount pool. It's one of the more exciting products that we've been able to offer. In our office, we've been about 40 districts across the state, and we anticipate that significantly more even a year or so. Matt, do you want me to go into some of the individual coverages or the head sheet? I would look at this one. I'm here to take any questions you would have and just make sure that everybody is comfortable with what is happening here.
You guys have any questions on that?
How much are we saving with this plan?
Over last year, it'll be about $70,000.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. I think that answered all their questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much. These are obviously awkward times. I feel we're 6 blocks away from the office and we're doing it remotely like this. It just, I guess I'm old enough for all this stuff seems really weird. But we wish you all the best as a district and as a board. We know you have many challenges in front of you. We're here as a business in Newton to support you at whatever level we can. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if there's something we can do, just even beyond insurance. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep.
And you want, this is for approval, right? I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve joining the KASB Kansas Educational Risk Management Insurance Pool as presented.
Second. Moved and seconded, any discussion? Any question? Okay, all those in favor? Toby?
Aye.
7-0. Next item, approval of mobile maintenance pathways course for NHS.
You might recall that we brought course additions to you earlier. And this one is one that CTE continues to evolve and the state continues to change things and offer new things. So this is one that they would like to have as a capstone for the 2021 school year. And Sheila, would you like Sheila and Blake are on here to speak to this item?
And I can go ahead and just, there's always another course, right? So we're coming to you hoping to get this approved. So every March, we have to submit to the state our pathways. And we have 17 different pathways that we submit. And as part of that pathway application, we have to include our goals for the pathway, the advisory board, articulation agreement, and classes offered. They get sent off to the state, and then the state looks them over, and usually, if there's not big changes, they'll send it back and say, you're good to go. And that's happened with most of the ones for this year. We did get one back, though, and it's the mobile maintenance pathway. And what the state has told us is that, and this is this new thing, is that we need to offer a new class at the application of the capstone level. And so that class is research and emerging trends in transportation. Basically what this class is kids are researching, so they're doing a research project on transportation, but there's also like an internship component to it as well, which we cover as part of different pathways and even within this one pathway. But what the state has started to do is they start to break down these pathways into different strains. And we've been offering all the classes, at least one class in all the strands, so we're good to go. But now they're starting to break them down even farther. We're going to start to see this trend, I think, in more pathways as we head throughout the year. So even if you're offering a class at the application level, now they're saying, well, you also have to offer this class. So what we're proposing is putting it on the books for next year, so starting in August. I've already talked to Janet Crittenden, who's the head counselor at Newton High School. She's okay with what we're doing here. Also talked with Bob Sigler, the CTE department head in charge of the auto area. She's okay with this too. So what we're proposing is that we put this on the books, and it would be on the books. If a student really wants to take this, they can. We'd offer it for half a credit. I'm not sure how many of the auto students would be interested because this is all research. I think they like to get their hands dirty, but if they want to, they can. And what we would do is with the PT director, they would basically kind of facilitate this. And so we'd have a teacher's record for it and kind of facilitate it that way. We're not looking for an overload. We're not looking good on the schedule, nothing like that. It would just be all in the books so that we're good with the state. Because to offer this comprehensive pathway, we have to offer this one class.
So because of our disapproval of this pathway on the state level, because we don't have this capstone course, we are bringing this to you tonight to ask you to approve it so that we can get approval for that pathway on the state level. That's why it's this time of the year instead of when we normally do this. There's no additional cost to this proposal or time, teacher time. So it would be a nested class if it occurs, which just means the teachers would be supervising the students within another class.
Will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the research and emerging trends in transportation 40250 course to be added to the NHS course book for the mobile maintenance pathway in the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
Move in second, any discussion? All those in favor? Toby?
Aye.
Celia? Okay, approve Head Start supplemental COLA funds.
Again, Head Start has released, or the federal government has released additional funding for cost of living allowances for Head Start programs. This is not something that occurs every year. And several years ago, before we kind of caught up with where we currently are, we actually did not apply for one when it became available to us. This was early in our Head Start experience. And so just wanted you to be aware that this is not offered every year. We do feel like it is a good idea for the district to apply for these funds to help support additional costs of salary. So we are asking that the board approve the request to apply for supplemental COLA funds for Head Start.
Motion.
I move to approve the Head Start supplemental COLA funds application. Second.
Move in second, any discussion? All those in favor? Toby?
Aye.
7-0. Approve Head Start supplemental quality improvement.
Again, these types of grants are not always available, and sometimes they're very specific in the type of need that you can apply for. You might recall that as you approved the budget that was involved in the Head Start continuation grant earlier this year, that one of the hard decisions was not providing transportation to many of our families. So what the Head Start staff is proposing is that we do apply for these supplemental quality improvement funds in order to be able to provide transportation for families. So that's what these funds would be used for.
If we do receive these funds, how much of our transportation services will be able to be reinstated if we had to cut?
No, but that was, yes. I do not know that, but I will check. I'm trying to see what the.
Don't quote me, but I feel like the savings was around 30,000.
It was.
So, I don't know.
Yes, I believe it was $32,000 to $35,000 was the previous amount that was cut. So, I'm sorry.
That was so much.
So what are they applying for, Matt? What's the total?
55.
Yeah. So it should, in theory, provide some towards maybe replacing some vehicles or repairing vehicles, because we didn't include the cost of repairs in some of that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Sorry.
I move to approve the Head Start supplemental quality improvement funds application.
Second.
Move in second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
7-0. Approve new ELA resource adoption.
Sheila and the teachers that are members of the English Language Arts team have been studying standards and resources for over a year in moving forward with a new adoption. It has been 7 years, and we do try to keep things on a 7-year rotation. And so this is the second time in the last 8 years since Sheila and I have been here that we've come to the board with a request for items, resources for pre-K through grade 6. Is that right, Sheila, on this adoption?
And to go back and get my mind. Actually, this would be pre-K 4 then.
Okay. See, I never know when elementary ends. Does it end at 4th grade or does it end at 6th grade? I guess that's right, because we have the platform for our English language arts at 5, 6.
Right, correct.
So would you like to explain to them your process and then the cost?
Absolutely. So our pre-K 12 ELA leadership team has been in place, as Deb mentioned, since I came to Newton over 8 years ago. And so we brought that team together and met every month. And we were really diving into the research on the science of reading and how the brain learns to read. And we had some really deep conversations about resources that we have been using for a number of years and what our data looks like and what the achievement is of our students, and that we were reflecting and saying, okay, we need to shift some of our resources into that learning that we discovered in this school year through our book study, people attending a number of workshops, even hearing more recent research from individuals such as Dr. David Kilpatrick on the science of reading. And for those that love to dive into that kind of content, we would say that we were in our element or looking out, whatever, how we want to frame that, but we were finding that we were learning more and understanding more about how students learn to read. And that in particular at pre-K and K, that we can do better from what we have been doing. And so with our resources that we piloted and instructional strategies that we want to improve, I believe that what you see here in our proposal is going to help us with that. In particular, in thinking back over these last several years, we had adopted the workers, we had anticipated that there would be enough there for the foundational skills, especially for phonics instruction, and that piece was not there. So with the addition of the pathways to reading, and that is going to give us that solid foundation that we need for the kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade students, and with the teachers, resources that they would be able to use that would be able to meet what is needed there based on that explicit instruction that those students need. So we feel confident about what we have been reviewing and thankful in all of this. We had been far enough along in the review process because the last quarter we have been asked to reflect on the pilot and trying to think about what we were going to be doing. And had this been at a different time of year, that might have been a little more interesting because the pilot really needs to be done with the students and preferably in the same room. So I imagine we would have figured it out, but it would have been just a little bit more complicated on that. I think that gives a pretty good overview, Deb.
So in the board information, you see the total cost of this adoption at $349,309.57. We do ask that the board approve the expenditure of these funds for the purpose of purchasing new resources for pre-K through grade 4. And in addition to that, this will replace animated alphabet. So part of what they looked at were our current resources, providing the structure and the explicit instruction, as Sheila said, that is needed, reading instructions.
I see in here it's mentioned that the lessons include differentiated instruction and technology enhanced features. What will this look like in the future as far as screen time and how much those kids are on screens now for this sort of learning? Because for ELA, will there be a significant increase or a slight increase, or depending on individual needs?
I'm going to let Sheila answer that question. I would say, from the very little I know, that you probably will see very little change in the amount of screen time for pre-K through grade 4 students. They already have access to technology enhanced materials, and so there's already some of that goes on. But I think, generally speaking, primary teachers believe strongly that kids need to have books in their hands and reading from a book. So Sheila, do you have additional information? The question is, will there be an increase in the amount of screen time that pre-K through grade 4 students would experience based on using these new resources?
No, thanks for repeating that, Deb. I had heard the end of the question. The Pathways to Reading has no digital resource at all. That one is very specific to students learning to read and all of the foundational skills that they need. And so it is all explicit instruction, no technology. There's manipulatives that are used, letter tiles, the actual letters of the alphabet, very much focusing on what the mouth does for the different sounds of the letters of the alphabet, whether it be the consonant or the vowels. So there is no digital component with that at all. And then, like you were saying, Deb, in regards to wonders, the percentages are very minimal at the pre-K and K. If there would be screen time, it would be more like a whole group. What the teacher is using to display, maybe they might have a story read aloud to the students through their smart board or something like that. And then as the students get into those 3rd and 4th grade, we might be doing a portion of their literacy block online, but everything that they're going to be receiving would all be in print. And that would include a literature anthology book, and in those grades 3 and 4, they would have a reading writing companion so that they're looking at the story they have for the week and they are able to annotate, cite, and write their notes within the book itself. So I think you're going to see a real stark difference in pre-K4 for them to be doing things online as opposed to the grades 5 through 12. And I think it's developmentally appropriate even in that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I've got one question. When we talk about textbook fees and all the things that's paid for, all the things that pays for, this is what we're talking about, right? Okay. Just want to make sure that, just bringing a thought full circle in mind for everything.
Anything else? Okay, we'll take a motion.
I move to approve adoption of ELA resources beginning with the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
Moving second, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
7-0. Approved MOU for IMLO.
Again, we continue to have a partnership with Amber Hope in providing educational services for students that are residential children on their campus. And we have updated the MOU from last year to this year as we have learned To be clearer, one of the things that we found, for instance, was that we would provide the special ed teacher, and there was no reference to regular education teachers. Well, there's only one special education teacher assigned there, and everyone else is regular education. So we just wanted to make sure that the MOU was reflective of what we're actually doing. Sheila, are there any other changes that are specific that need to be shared?
No, Deb, that was one.
And it has been reviewed by John Robb to make sure that it's compliant with state regulations and laws as it applies to school districts. So we do recommend that you approve it for the upcoming school year.
I have a couple of questions just about Opportunity Academy in general. What is the ratio of Emberhood kids as opposed to Chisholm and Newton High School students that are at Opportunity Academy?
It is significantly higher. There are fewer students that are community kids that are there. And I believe at this last year, we had 10 community kids to about 35 Opportunity Academy kids. Is that correct, Sheila?
Was she asking the ratio, Deb?
Right. How many community kids versus how many Amber Hope students?
Right, and so I believe that on average, it would have been approximately 37 Amber Hope, 36 Amber Hope girls and between 15 and 20 community students to get up to that number of 50.
So when we have, I know that there are applications filled out for our own Chisholm and high school kids. How many of are we able to accommodate all of those? How many do we have to turn away?
We are not able to accommodate them all. In fact, we did not, I believe, have any slots for Chisholm students this year. All of this
That's correct.
by high school age students this year.
Who makes the decision?
The decision is made by a team, and Tyler Swally, of course, as the administrator of that building, is on that team. And they meet with high school administration and Chisholm administration, review the student's application in light of the criteria that has been developed for acceptance into that program. And then a decision is made based on the criteria.
So how many of our students do you think that we denied their application for that?
I don't know. Sheila, do you happen to know how many students' applications were denied entrance into Opportunity Academy?
I do not know that. I do know that in the part of that it is an application process and there's certain steps that have to be completed. And I know on several of those, when the student and the parent were taking a tour of the school or sitting down and visiting with administration in one of those big buildings, sometimes it was the student or the parent that didn't want to move forward. So it wasn't always that there was room, but they weren't accepted. Many times it was the decision coming from the family.
Do we have that breakdown information of if it was they chose not to go further or they didn't qualify?
We could probably get it. We don't have it tonight, obviously. We could probably get it. Tyler Swally probably has that information. So Sheila, do you want to ask Tyler to get that information for us?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm curious, is the placement criteria, is that available general public? I mean, can we, I'm not sure. You mentioned the criteria and in the MOU 2.3, it says something about if a student has an IEP and they meet the placement criteria. we can assign them to that building. But I'm not sure exactly where to find that placement criteria.
Well, if it's in referencing special education students, it would be placement information specific to special ed. So that would be a different set of criteria than a student that's making application. So the answer would be, I think, yes, I don't think it's a trade secret on the criteria. So we can also get the criteria for you and provide that to them.
And Deb, I might add that the process would be outlined in the student handbook.
Yes.
Is this something that if we see there's a need for additional spots, are we looking at expanding those numbers? Are we maxed out at 50 and we can never go higher? Because I feel like when this was originally brought up and proposed, it was for the Amber Hope kids and also kind of sold as an alternative placement for students who have that need. And I don't know that that's really how it's being portrayed or how it's being perceived perhaps, especially by some teachers who say we have this student who would really excel in this alternative setting. They are not, we're not meeting their needs in a general classroom. So I want to make sure that we're not pushing our Newton kids off to the side if they have these needs.
Well, I would say no, we're not pushing our Newton kids off to the side if they have this need. And again, there's a set of criteria, the criteria are followed, and that's what the determining factor is. You might recall, well, actually, some of you might not recall because you weren't on board yet, but when this was proposed last spring to go ahead and open this, we had initially said that we were going to hire, I believe it was 7 teachers, and we only ended up hiring 6, which automatically cut off 10 slots no longer available because we didn't hire a teacher for that position. We have limited space in that building. What we're finding is that 10 kids to a classroom is kind of the max for these students. And I believe there is 1 classroom that is still available, if I'm remembering the layout of the school. The plans on Amber Hope's side were to do a building project and increase the size of the building, which then of course would increase the availability of slots and people. We eventually would like to go to 130 students, but the facility will not allow us to be able to do that. We're limited by space.
Any other questions? Okay. Want to take a motion?
I move to approve the MOU between Amber Hope and Newton USD 373 for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
7-0. Approve the 2021 transportation handbook.
Before we move on, can we move the camera to where we can actually see the board? Hey, there you go.
And Matt, can you do the voting? Jennifer was against.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Opposed. I just, okay, I'm sorry, 6-1. Thank you. You should call me.
Yeah. I didn't bring my club tonight.
Okay, let's see. Now we're on the transportation.
Again, annually, the handbooks come to the board for review. At this time, Sheila's Wallen, outside of updating for dates and those kinds of things, is not making any changes, not recommending any changes to the handbook. So we would ask that you approve the 2020-21 handbook.
Any discussion, questions? All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, motion. See, you got me all confused.
I move to approve the 2020-21 transportation handbook.
All right. Second. I'll give it to Luke. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. 7-0, right? Okay. All right, let's see. YMCA Summer Scholars Program.
And again, last year we partnered with the YMCA to provide a summer program for first grade and second grade students. We would like to do that again. Again, trying to be very flexible with COVID-19. So we don't exactly have for you tonight a start date or an end date or any of those kinds of things. But in the event that we get to move forward, we would like to have your approval to allow us to do that.
And Deb, we did not have the MOU, so I did not put that in as an action, but we can make that if you want.
Oh, sorry.
But we don't have an MOU to approve.
We talked about having an MOU to approve.
There were too many unknowns.
What is your estimated start date, best case scenario?
Right now, best case scenario would be June 1. Don't think that's going to happen. So right now, we think June 15th, thereabouts. The week of the 15th.
Might just to at least approve the program of concept.
Yes, if you wouldn't mind, because then we could bring you the MOU, because our next board meeting is not till the 8th.
All right. So I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve continuing our partnership with YMCA to provide a summer learning launch program for students in first and second grade.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
7. Review of 2020-2021 handbooks.
And for your reading pleasure, over the next month, you have all of these handbooks to read. And next month, we will ask for you to approve them. But I believe this is the first reading on these. It says review.
It is, that's your correct.
All right.
They will come
Yes.
back for approval at the next meeting.
So Joni has been working on these with the building administrators. And again, this is an annual event. There will likely be a delay in the high school one so that the new principal has an opportunity to review that and make any suggested changes that he would like to have included or have the board consider. So these will come back next month.
Any questions, comments?
I have some concerns about the dress code changes. My biggest concern is that we don't have consistency, especially from middle schools up to high school. They're dramatically different. And I don't think that's appropriate for us as one district to hop from building to building, especially middle school. You're going every 2 years. We should have some consistency. Honestly, it could all be the same from Santa Fe to Chisholm to the high school. So I would like to see collaboration between at least those 3 buildings and be on the same page on what they present to us.
We will send that back to the administrators.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that, is I think one of the things being new to the board and as a parent, there's a lot of inconsistency with things like that. And I think the dress code policy should be consistent throughout the district to make it easier.
And and I don't know how anyone else feels, but one point I would make would be that there are considerable differences between elementary and high. What looks appropriate, and since I'm not sure exactly what you're speaking to, but what looks appropriate on a 4th grader, for example, might not look appropriate on a high school student. So there are probably going to be some inconsistencies. Also, things like, although we don't have a large problem in Newton, we still have a little bit of a problem with inappropriate sayings on shirts or those kinds of things that are different at different ages.
Well, and I feel like things like that are consistent, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, or 12th. So things like that, you know, but I share her concern in the inconsistency of the dress code especially.
I would say especially by the time we have students in 8th grade, the dress code should be almost identical to what they're going to enter into in high school the next year. There's no reason for you to swing back and forth between the three buildings. And I'm not saying kindergarten dress code is the same as a senior, but our middle schools, once they get to that point, they are dressing themselves and need to learn how to dress appropriately for an educational setting. And so I would just like to see some collaboration between those, at least those three buildings.
When they do work on this, and we don't have the new high school proposal, so I can't see that, so I just have to go by our current year. Are the buildings working together as far as, and a couple of big things would be dress code and behavioral issues, obviously like non-negotiable issues that will be set. Are they collaborating together or are they working more building by building? Because I would kind of like to see some overlap of where they're similar, where they might be different. And I think I agree with the other girls, need to be very consistent about our expectations.
I would say, again, that there are differences between elementary, middle, and high as far as discipline is concerned. And it's not to say that it's any less wrong if it happens in kindergarten or it happens as a senior, but the difference is in the ability of the child to make a decision and be held accountable for an action. If I am kicked by a kindergarten student, that is different than if I'm kicked by a senior high student. So there are some inconsistencies that are going to occur anyway. As far as discipline is concerned, together as a district, we worked on some of those kinds of topics around discipline as a district. And then schools made it fit the students in their building. And so again, you have then things that are inconsistent from building to building as far as expectations are concerned. As far as dress code, I am not aware of a meeting, for example, where they sat down and worked on dress code together. So I do not believe that is true.
And just to clarify, when I talk about consistencies, I do mean age appropriate consistencies, because yes, there will be huge differences, and a lot of times your elementary kids might not have an adult to help them get dressed, and they're too young to know, and I completely understand that. But I guess my mind typically goes towards the older kids, not the one, and discipline, they know better, they've done this long enough. But just consistencies and expectations at an appropriate age and group level.
I mean, back to your example, if you get kicked by a preschooler, kindergartner versus if you get kicked by a high school student, the expectation should still be you don't kick.
Oh, absolutely.
Now the discipline, is tailor-made to the age range. I understand that, but I think it would be nice to have some language in these handbooks of our expectations being the same and enforced a little more consistently, that this is what we expect and nothing less. I hate to use the word punishment. Through discipline, consequences, yes. Obviously will be different. What I would like to see is more consistency throughout all of the age groups though. So throughout all of our elementary buildings to have more consistent response. I know some of them focus more on their social emotional responses and others just are a little different. I would like to see some consistency so that as we filter up to our buildings where we can read Santa Fe and Chisholm, that they've all had a very similar experience in that way, and they know what to expect when they do not meet those expectations. Obviously, these are big picture.
Are there inconsistencies in either category that could be elucidated for us so that we can understand where it is we're falling short?
In behavior or dress code?
Either category.
Well, I mentioned in our elementary buildings, we've got some who are doing very different social emotional responses versus other elementary buildings. And I mean, I see no reason why we can't collaborate as all the elementaries and say, this works really well for us. Can we try to integrate this through all of our elementaries? You know, whatever. I just feel like they come from all these different elementaries and then get to Santa Fe and they have a hard time coming together because their experiences were different too.
Well, and as far as the dress codes go, if you look at the current handbooks, they're all different. And I think what we're trying to say is that dress code should be a common, consistent thing, expectation through the district. You know, spaghetti straps and that kind of dressing, the logos inappropriate, those should be consistent throughout every building.
And I guess I would say, if we're going to say hoodies are not allowed in this building, then are they allowed in another building? And there we have, obviously taking into consideration a little bit of an age appropriateness. Are we saying Chisholm can have it and the high school may not, or vice versa? So that's where it gets to be inconsistent. I feel like we just need to make sure, and it's hard not knowing what the high school might come back with us to have, because Chisholm, their current proposal is significantly different than what we had last year. And the high school may be the same way, maybe not, I don't know. So I would like to kind of see where the high school is coming from and do that. I think we're in a unique position here, and it could be a really great thing. We know our Santa Fe kids are going to Chisholm. We're not splitting into two different schools. So if we do have strong consistencies, we know they're just going to step up to Chisholm in the high school, and they'll know their expectations. So it's not starting over building to building. And I think that would be good for not only the students, but also the teachers know where they came from. And yes, you students did have this expectation, and you need to have it in this building as well.
Are we suggesting a de facto code?
Could you say that again, Toby?
It sounds to me like we're suggesting a de facto board level dress code if we're going to approve dress codes from each building based on whether or not we think that they collaborated appropriately or to a greater or lesser degree, and whether or not we believe that the dress code should be the same at Chisholm or Santa Fe or the high school. I mean, I get concerned about whether or not we're stepping into the territory of the administrators that we hire to run these buildings.
And I don't like getting in the weeds. I don't want to get into the weeds. I want to have leadership that, yes, we trust 100% that these things are a great move. I would love that. I think especially with so many new faces coming in, new board, I think it's easier as a parent and a board member if we can know that people work collaboratively together. We have district-wide expectations. I think it just comes across better. Like I said, I don't want to get into the weeds, but I guess I put on my parent hat when I look at a lot of this, and I have kids in 3 different buildings, and I think, wait, everything's different. Why is that? Why is it okay for some and not okay for others? So I like the idea of having a little more unity and knowing that, yes, they've planned this out. The administration has worked, they planned this out, they have a great plan. I trust that more sometimes than just individual buildings, and those could change year to year.
So I look at the Chisholm, the new dress code for Chisholm, and I think maybe I'm being oversimplifying here, but it seems like this could be an email asking our new high school principal and maybe some of their staff if this looks okay to them as well. And we can have the same dress code in 2 different buildings. Somebody obviously went through a lot of time to make this. And I don't know if that's the plan for consistency. It wouldn't even take a whole lot of collaboration, I don't think. So just,
Do you know why the change at Chisholm? I mean, it's pretty radical. I mean, it's a lot more detailed as far as, so like a preamble. It's much different than the other dress code.
Again, I think part of it came out of discussion with students that happened as a result of conversations about dress code last year. And so that was designed around the work, and I want to say it's coming out of Oregon or Washington State, that was done and then adapted to fit what Chisholm thought was what they wanted for their students. We don't know what the high school did with that information, whether there would have been changes brought forth anyway on the high school side regarding dress code because of the change. So. But again, we will send it back to the administrators and say, hey, take a look at this and see if you can come up with something that is consistent. 5-12 at least, because K4, all K4 buildings operate under the same handbook, so they have the same expectations.
Anything else?
Yeah, my only feedback is if we do look at dress code throughout the district, that we do include the student voice in that process as much as we can. I remember, I think it was last year when we were talking about the dress code at the high school, that was a big back and forth, was the student voice really included?
There was student representation.
Yes.
yeah, but
Depends
the plan
on-
that
it
came
depends
up with
on
kind of
who's-
got
yeah.
lost in the shuffle.
Depends on whose voice you consider. So I don't want to go into it, but yeah, if we do a district-wide dress code review, let's talk to the kids about it as well.
Well, then that won't be available for this next year's handbook.
That's what I
Because
said.
there is no way to do that and have it ready for the start of the school year.
I don't know, we came up with what we have here for Chisholm, I think it looks pretty good. I think a discussion between administrators and different buildings.
Yeah, the Chisholm one looks good to me as well.
I doubt if that's good.
Requirements.
I will support Chisholm as written.
Okay.
It would be helpful if you would state in an email to me what you would not support, so that I can get that information back to the administrators. Because right now, they would have no idea what specifically is an issue.
It just needs to be simple. It needs to be more like high school than like the one we had last year.
I've looked at a number of other districts surrounding us in the different leagues that Chisholm's in, just to kind of see where do we fall compared to other districts? What are their dress codes like? Because I've not had children in other districts to know. One piece that really jumps out to me in ours is a huge portion of dress code values and goals of the student dress code. I've not seen really anything that in depth in any other district, any other explanation. So for me, that's a little interesting, I guess. Obviously, some of these banning anything that's related to drugs, alcohol, tobacco, yes, I've seen that absolutely everywhere. But, and I'm not opposed to kids expressing themselves. I think especially since we don't have uniforms, there's plenty of opportunity for that. But I just think it's interesting how much time was put into values and goals when we're talking about maintaining a safe learning environment and focusing on teaching. I feel like some of these, and almost anti-bullying, anti-discrimination, yes, that's very important. We have other policy for that. We have other rules for that. So I guess that just struck me as kind of odd because I've not seen that really anywhere. And then as far as actual specifics of the dress code, there are some specifics in here, but as far as length of shorts and dresses, and I have boys, so I don't have dresses or skirts that I'm dealing with, but tank tops, all these different things. And maybe they don't want to get into specifics, and they may have very good reason for that. Maybe they could look at that just to give a little more guidance and understanding. I can see the advantages to both sides, and I don't work in the buildings every day, so I don't know the benefits for that. But I think we need to be pretty clear on what is allowed and what isn't allowed so that it's easily understandable to our parents and students. Because if we do have a student who's pulled in because their administrator thinks that shirt is not appropriate, well, if we didn't really tell them what we consider appropriate, did that student or parent really know? Because they might feel it is, but is it appropriate for what we expect in our classrooms? So I would like to have a little more clarity on some things like that.
I've been on a dress code committee almost every year that I've been a teacher, and obviously I'm a man, so I'm speaking a little bit out of place, but the conversation that we always get into is when we lay things out specifically, it doesn't apply equally to different body types. It doesn't apply equally, particularly to girls who are developing at different rates. And dress code issues, when we're talking about the sorts of things that we're mentioning, tank tops, short length, skirt length, they almost never apply to boys. And so there's a gender equity issue in that conversation as well. What we don't ever want to do is to come away with a dress code that inadvertently shames certain individuals for the way their clothes fit them.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with stating that that's not your intention, like the Chisholm one is doing. You guys seem to have problems with the preamble of the Chisholm one. I like what specifically is do you not like about it. So yeah, when you guys are saying what you don't like about these dress codes, it's hard to follow because they're so vague. So I hope you really give Deb some details that she can give to the administrators on what you want changed.
Well, and I think when it comes to how this was laid out and presented to us, it's a lot. And I think the same things can be said with all of that other things to make it more, I don't know if simplified is the right word, but if you look at other districts in our league, in our area, of how they have it presented in their handbooks, you get the same effect in just a paragraph or two, not a full page in a diagram. And that's what I want to get away from.
I feel like the diagram, maybe it doesn't need all the extra words, but when I look at the diagram by itself, like, this is what you may wear, this is what you may not wear, that part seems pretty simple to me.
But not all of our buildings presented that way. And I would think that the high school and the Chisholm would have very, very similar dress codes.
Right.
And this isn't. That's all I'm saying is we have an inconsistency amongst some of these things. That's what I'm thinking.
So is it more of a presentation of the dress code and less the content of the dress code?
Maybe. For me, it's not. I want the content to be consistent from building to building, because I don't want, specifically in here, spaghetti straps. They can wear them at Chisholm, but the next year they can't wear them at high school. Is somebody gonna immediately protest, the first day of school in August and say, well, I could wear them last year, why can't I wear them here?
Well,
They can't change.
They can't wear them this year, but next year they're gonna be able to at Chisholm. And then at high school they're not. So, it's just inconsistent as far as that goes.
I'm just looking for students to be, for the content that they receive and the expectation to be consistent from building to building. So we don't come into these situations where we're butting heads with the student because last year they could do something, but now this year they can't.
Or do we have that situation?
I just described one with spaghetti straps.
I mean, is there a problem where students are arguing that? Are we solving a problem that exists or a problem that might exist?
I can't name any names, but I would say in general, children thrive with having structure and consistency throughout their education. So I would think we would all.
So I would go back to my earlier question. Are we in fact saying that as a board, we're suggesting that building dress code policy is not a building level decision, it's a board decision? Because if that's what we're suggesting, then we may as well have somebody make a motion about what our district-wide dress code ought to be. I'm gonna vote no, because I think it's overstepping our bounds, but
Well,
that's where we're at.
I would consider dress code policy. And handbooks also.
Building or district level?
All handbook becomes policy. I can't speak for everyone in this room. I do not want to sit down and make a district-wide or even a building-wide dress code. I personally do not want to do that. Yes, it should be developed in the building or multiple buildings, but essentially when it comes to the board for approval to become policy, then yes, the board does vote on that. That's one of our main jobs, is to approve and develop policy so we can express ideas and expectations in general, and that's not out of line, but I do not have a personal desire to redo this whole thing just to my personal taste.
Neither do I.
Okay, anything else on that? Okay.
Do you feel like you got it done?
I'm going to send it back to the administrators and ask for consistent 5-12.
Head Start COVID.
So the agenda rearranged itself, and we've already taken action on that, so jump down to J, if you see J, Head Start COVID.
Oh,
I is COVID funding.
Yeah.
In mine.
Jay, is
we did it.
Imagine our computers are messing this up.
Okay,
We have-
it's right on mine, but I haven't hit refresh.
We're doing COLA and,
Yes, we haven't done COVID yet.
right, and like it keeps floating around.
Yeah, our computers are showing I is approved Head Start, something wrong, COLA. But we've done that.
No, oh, okay, yes, we have done that.
So what do your computers show?
I showed Jay Head Start COVID funding.
Yes.
Is that right?
And just don't hit refresh, and we should be okay.
Okay.
Is that the item?
Yes, Head Start COVID funding
Okay.
is the next item. And again, the Office of Head Start is issuing one-time funding in response to our current pandemic. And we have been awarded $37,700. It does not require competition, and we all cheered when we read that. And so we will comply with whatever restrictions are given. And our center intends to purchase technology items to aid in family services and enrollment, hand washing information, CPR and first aid training for parents and families, mental health educational opportunities for families, and two-way radios for all classrooms and some additional support staff. And there are no matching, non-federal share requirements for these funds. So we're ever so grateful for these funds. And I'm really sorry that my great-grandchildren are going to be paying off for that. But
You'll be gone. Okay. So you don't need anything from us?
no,
Okay.
just an information item, let you know. When the bills come in and you approve those, just, it's still good money.
All right, So ladies, any questions? And then executive session.
Correct for personnel to start, and John, Rob, and Fred. Also, please, Mr. Van Eyck. How much time? I'm gonna go with 20 minutes.
Can we take a quick break?
Yes,
Comfort break?
at your pleasure.
Let's do that, Rob.